Okay, let's talk about functions. So I'm over here on the left and I'm in the JavaScript world, and I'm going to say, I'm going to create a function called print hello world, and in it, I will just console log out hello world. And I'll just to keep things complete, I'll just return this, even though that doesn't really do anything, but just to use the return statement. And I'll run this and we'll see, well, nothing printed out because I need to call it. So I'm going to call this function. And now I'm going to run it. And then I should see the hello world printed out. This is great. Let's port this over to JavaScript or to Python. So I'm just going to copy and paste this right over here and run that. And we can see that this is not going to work because this is not the syntax of making a function in Python. Okay, so what we need to do is convert this. So instead of the keyword function, Python uses the keyword def, as in definition. We are defining a function. Okay, you still need to have a name of a function. You still have to have the parentheses where arguments can be sent in. And the first thing that's going to change, well, after the def keyword, is that we don't need an opening brace, curly brace. Python does not use curly braces. What it needs is a colon. That indicates you are done with the signature of the function. So we're going to have the body. Well, that's fine. The body is valid code. But what we need to do is, instead of curly braces to define the body, we are going to indent. So luckily, usually when you code JavaScript, you already do indentation just for readability. But in Python, that's actually needed. That is what the compiler uses to say, what is part of this function body? So we're going to space over twice if you had not already done that from the JavaScript. And whatever else we wanted to put in here, we could put another variable equals something, and then we can print out that variable. Any type of code that you need to run in here, it just needs to be indented twice. And then the last curly brace, we just don't need. So we're just going to get rid of it. Okay? So make sure you can compare this, the syntax for a function in Python, to the syntax for a function in JavaScript. And when we call the function, that is just exactly the same, but we don't need semicolons again. And we can see the output is now printed and it is working. Okay, arguments are exactly the same as JavaScript. You just type the name of an argument and there's no type definition, but order matters. And there is one other thing to be aware of that is important. The one thing that is different between JavaScript arguments and Python arguments is that Python arguments are required. So I have two arguments here, and I'm going to send something in for those arguments. And what I'm going to do is let me return those two arguments concatenated together. Oops, make sure you spell the arguments. Python is also case sensitive, by the way, so you do need to spell everything the same. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to have two arguments to demonstrate this concept. I'm going to use the return statement to show that the behavior of a return is exactly the same. And then we'll just capture the result in a variable and print that out. Okay, so if I run this, then I can see that the exact same output appeared in the output. And if the thing I want to demonstrate is that if we do not send in the second argument, this function requires two arguments, but we're not sending in the second argument. So what's going to happen? So we get an error. Okay, so Python recognizes that this function requires two arguments. You only gave it one. That is an error. In JavaScript, that would not happen. The second argument would just become undefined, but the code would run successfully. So make sure you keep that difference in mind.